Welcome to Warriors in Quiet Water's inaugural State of the Organization address, and thank you for joining us virtually. Before we begin the program in a few minutes, I want to share how the virtual portion of this event will work. Chief Executive Officer Brian Gilman will be speaking here at Quiet Waters Ranch to a small in-person audience. You will see Brian and his slides on your screen. You are not visible to Brian or the audience at the ranch. Please do not worry about your camera or muting yourself. We ask that you be an active listener. Brian will be taking questions after his speech. If you would like to ask a question, please type it into the comment section. We will be monitoring YouTube for questions. We will answer as many of your questions as we have time for during the Q&A session. Thank you for attending. The presentation will start shortly. Ready? Please silence your phones. We're about to start. Welcome to Warriors in Quiet Water's inaugural State of the Organization address from beautiful Bozeman, Montana on a sunny day. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. On behalf of Warriors in Quiet Water's Foundation staff and board members, thank you for attending this event. My name is Rob Fox. I've been volunteering for WQW for 5 years and recently joined the board of directors in 2022. I want to start the event by thanking the wonderful volunteers who helped make this possible today. To Thomas Neiman, Marianne Schumacher, Teresa Lerner, Lee Rimkus, Kyra Rennie, and Joy Winkler. Thank you for dedicating your time and talents to WQW's mission. In the last few years, WQW has had significant growth. My wife Christy and I have had the good fortune of volunteering for Warriors in Quiet Waters for the last 5 years, thanks to an introduction from our great friend Heather Stewart. I have volunteered in some capacity on 9 different fishing experiences, directly interacting with the Warriors. Besides being a father and husband, my time invested in WQW and the brave men and women it serves has been the most valuable experience I have ever had. I am a board member, but a volunteer first. Interacting with these veterans who come from all around the country, as well as other volunteers, reset my internal compass in a positive way that nothing else does. It's hard to deny that summertime in Montana, as it is today, is beautiful, and floating down the Yellowstone in a guide boat, fishing with dry flies, hardly gets any better. But -20 in northern Montana on 2 feet of ice with the wind blowing 30 miles an hour plus is invigorating, to say the least. Not surprisingly, Warriors seem to thrive in these adverse conditions. I'm referring to the IceFX, which has always been held in northern Montana, often near the Canadian border, and it is designed for alumni Warriors who have previously been through at least one FX. WQW decided to add a second IceFX in 2022, but in southwest Montana to keep the Warriors here at the ranch after fishing. The first 2 days were fine fishing, kind of warm, sunny, blue skies, good times and pretty views, but really nothing memorable. The third day was epic. We were on a lake we had never fished, located in the middle of nowhere with gray skies, cold temperatures, and winds that started out at 30 to 40 miles an hour and picked up from there. The lake had glare ice as slick as possible. We could only set up one fishing tent and no fish were biting. As the wind picked up in the far corner of the lake, waves began forming under the ice, causing it to fold over on top of itself. A 10-foot wide open section grew to 20 feet and kept growing larger exponentially in no time. It was now so windy, my job was to stand outside our only fishing tent and keep watch that the guy line anchors weren't loosening. And if need be, pull the warrior who was fishing inside out of the tent immediately. He literally would have sailed across the ice over a mile if our tent had blown away. As time went on, the waves under the ice picked up even more, along with the wind, which was now blowing a mere 60 miles an hour. These crazy conditions caused our in-house expert, Jesse, to instruct us to get off the ice immediately. The wind was blowing so incredibly hard, it took 12 men to take down the one small tent. It was almost impossible to move forward through the wind. One warrior kept fishing until the end and got this. A big old wrinkled, hook-jawed granddaddy trout. Literally one of the biggest, oldest fish I have ever experienced on a fishing experience. The only fish caught that day, caught in conditions that no one would ever willingly fish in. Total joy on the ice from the Warriors. The embodiment of teamwork, embracing the suck to achieve a goal of one fish. Talking to the Warriors, they to a man said they would never forget that day. It was special. It was memorable. You had to be there. On that day, those veterans for a few hours set their troubles aside and leaned into the wind. Being outside in nature on beautiful days or winter windstorms with your warrior teammates, focusing on fish or the mountains, is a perfect storm for helping to achieve positive change. WQW keeps leaning into the wind and offering more to post 9/11 combat veterans through expanded programming and extended engagements. Thank you for supporting our mission. Warriors first, always. That's the mission we live by. It is my honor to serve our warriors and always will be. Next, Brian Gilman, Chief Executive Officer of WQW, will share more about how this organization has evolved to meet the need of today's post-9/11 combat veterans. Brian grew up in Butte, Montana, and retired from the Marine Corps early to lead the team at WQW after almost 27 years of service. Brian's military career, including his 3 years advocating for veterans and transitioning service members on behalf of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, led him to Warriors in Quiet Waters, where he has guided the effort to increase the impact our programs have upon those we serve. We've asked him to speak because WQW has grown significantly in the last 3 years. Every effort has been made to do what is right for warriors. We want you all to hear from Brian firsthand how the organization's newest program, Built for More, is already impacting lives. Additionally, we're excited that Brian will be revealing WQW's new brand to you today. It's pretty damn cool. With that, welcome Brian Gilman, retired Colonel, United States Marine Corps, and CEO of WQW.
Thank you all for being here. Those that are here in attendance with us at Quiet Waters Ranch here in Bozeman, Montana. Those that are watching online virtually, we appreciate and are greatly honored by you giving us the gift of time to hear about where Warriors in Quiet Waters Foundation has been and where we're going. And none of that would be possible without the Warriors in Quiet Waters team that starts with our board of directors, who many of are in attendance with us here today at Quiet Waters Ranch, and extends to our National Advisory Board, our volunteers, our donors, our alumni, and our staff that all make the impact that we deliver to post 9/11 combat veterans possible. So thank you so very much for being here. I thought I'd start the presentation today by showing you where Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni come from. Although we're a Montana-based organization whose legacy has been built on the community support that we find here in the Gallatin Valley, and whose culture and ethos is greatly influenced by Montana's toughness, resilience, and the abundance of pristine nature that we have here in Montana. We are a national veteran services organization that has served veterans from all over the United States. Next, I thought I'd provide you a snapshot of the post 9/11 combat veteran. The statistics on the graph provide a very basic snapshot of the average post 9/11 combat veteran. And as I compiled these stats, it occurred to me that some of them are what you would expect, like the fact that the vast majority of post 9/11 combat veterans were enlisted service members, and like the fact that the majority of them are married with children. Others, however, I think paint a picture of a post 9/11 combat veteran that many people wouldn't know. That the average post 9/11 combat veteran in the oldest cohort are now middle-aged. That post 9/11 combat veterans are unemployed at a lower rate than the national average. As of June 2023, that rate was 2.6% compared to the national average of 3.6%. Now, we have to note that the national average counts those unemployed Americans who are looking for work, and not all post 9/11 combat veterans are looking for work. But those that are doing better than their non-veteran peers. Nearly 70% of post 9/11 combat veterans have post-high school education and training. Now, these stats give us a narrow picture of who post 9/11 combat veterans are, but they don't speak to the challenges that post 9/11 combat veterans face. And I'd like to do that a little bit. There are 2 million post 9/11 combat veterans. According to the DoD casualty statistics, 54,000 post 9/11 combat veterans suffered physical wounds of war, including amputations, traumatic brain injuries, polytrauma, and other wounds. Now, these are all long-term challenges that these veterans will contend with for the rest of their lives. Hundreds of thousands of post 9/11 combat veterans suffered mental and moral wounds of combat, sometimes referred to as invisible wounds. Now, these wounds may be invisible, but they're as ravaging as physical wounds can be, in some cases even more so, as evidenced by the fact that roughly 340,000 post 9/11 combat veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress each year. We know from a longitudinal study that looked at over 6,000 transitioning service members over the 6 years surrounding their transition from military service that roughly half of all post 9/11 combat veterans will find their transition out of the military into civilian society extremely hard. Getting ahead of myself here. We also know from those studies that those that suffered physical or invisible wounds of war while they were in that transition makes their transition 10 times harder than it would otherwise be. Now, these stats partially explain the struggle, but it doesn't tell the whole story. I'm going to figure these graphics out. There we go. Another immense challenge that post 9/11 combat veterans face is the challenge of the loss of identity and purpose upon their transition from the military. Now, there are no studies that I'm aware of that provide us data on this phenomena. However, I can tell you from my personal experience, watching hundreds of my Marines transition out of the military, the many hundreds of veterans that I've spoken to, as well as the many stories that I've read and heard veterans tell, I can tell you that the role that identity and purpose plays in the lives of service members and veterans is immense. Now, this makes sense. We know from many human studies on well-being that a strong sense of identity and purpose are key to thriving in life. And we believe that it's even more acute for veterans. Because if you think about it, for the entire time that a service member serves in the military, a clear identity and an inspiring sense of purpose accompanies their service. I know for me personally, for the 27 years that I served in the Marine Corps, my identity was that of a U.S. Marine. My purpose was to serve my Marines, my unit, my mission, my country, and my family. And I lived with that identity and that purpose for the entire time that I served in the military. However, when a service member departs the military, that identity and that purpose is in many cases stripped away. And those service members, those budding veterans, are then left to rebuild that sense of identity and purpose again, all on their own. Without that team that surrounded them the entire time that they served in the military, without the leaders that they followed, they're left to figure it out on their own. This can be incredibly disorienting. We know it is incredibly disorienting for so many veterans. And it's a challenge that in so many cases causes our veterans to languish and prevents them from thriving. Tragically, these challenges have resulted in an epidemic of veteran suicide. According to the Department of Veteran Affairs 2020 Veteran Suicide Report, the veteran suicide rate is now 1.5 times that of the general population. Suicide is the second leading cause of death of post 9/11 combat veterans. A study conducted by Brown University in 2020 estimated the number of active duty service members and veterans who had died by suicide since 9/11. And they estimated that 30,000 active duty service members and veterans have died by suicide since 9/11. And we know from the DoD statistics that in that same time frame, we lost 7,400 service members killed in action to the post 9/11 conflicts. So that tells us that we've lost 4 times as many to suicide since 9/11 as we have to those killed in action. Now, we also know that over half of these suicides, a mental illness did not accompany them. They took their lives for different reasons. And we know for the 18 to 34-year-old cohort of veterans, the suicide rate has doubled since 2008. We don't have to accept this epidemic of suicide among our post 9/11 combat veterans. And Warriors in Quiet Waters is in the fight, enabling our veterans to move beyond healing from the trauma of combat to truly thriving in their lives. So let's talk a little bit about how we're doing that. And to do that, we have to go back to the beginning. Warriors in Quiet Waters believes that in the power of nature to heal and transform the lives of post 9/11 combat veterans. Our story began in 2007 with our solo fishing experience, which is a week-long fly fishing experience here in southwest Montana, designed to help veterans cope with the physical, psychological, and moral trauma of combat. The programming was designed to provide respite, healing, and a safe space for veterans to connect and find belonging with other veterans and the volunteers who care so deeply about them. And over the many years since 2007, the solo fishing experience has done what it was designed to do. to help nearly 1,000 veterans find healing and hope through fly fishing. It also sparked multiple other veteran programs based on fishing, to include a couples program, a family program, an ice fishing program, and a backcountry fly fishing program. The graphic that you see displayed here shows the trajectory of Warriors in Quiet Water since our founding in 2007. The line on the graph indicates the number of programs that we conducted each year. The numbers along the top indicate the numbers of veterans that we served each year as well. And it also shows you when we stood up additional programs, like those programs that I talked about before, the couples program, the backcountry fly fishing program. Now around 2019, the leadership in Warriors in Quiet Water started noticing that our veteran participants have changed over time. Upon investigating those changes, we concluded that for most of our new participants and for many of our Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni, many years had passed since their combat experience or their transition from the military. And in those ensuing years, many of these veterans developed coping mechanisms to enable them to move beyond those immediate crisis needs that our solo FX fishing experience was initially designed to serve. In 2020, working with the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University, we implemented a new process to measure and evaluate the impact of our program on post-9/11 combat veterans. This improved program evaluation process reinforced what we knew, that our programs were achieving the impact they were designed to achieve on our veteran participants. We also discovered, however, that several of the outcomes that our programming was designed to achieve did not persist for long periods of time after our veteran participants returned home. With that information, the Warriors in Quiet Waters Board of Directors recognized that Warriors in Quiet Waters had the potential to have a greater impact on the lives of post-9/11 combat veterans. The board's direction was clear: achieve our organizational potential and maximize our impact on post-9/11 combat veterans. So with that direction, the Warriors in Quiet Water staff and the board got to work. Over the course of the ensuing 2 years, we crafted a vision for future programming that moves warriors beyond healing from combat-related trauma to thriving in their post-military lives. This was reflected in our new mission statement that we published over a year ago. Warriors in Quiet Waters Foundation guides post-9/11 combat veterans and their loved ones to thrive and find peace, meaning, and purpose through fly fishing and other inspirational activities in nature. With that renewed mission statement, we developed a vision of the impact we wanted to achieve beyond our organization and beyond our programming. Thriving veterans contribute to thriving communities, and that means a better future for all of us. We spent 18 months planning and preparing to deploy a new program model that would enable us to achieve our vision. At the outset, we committed to the principle that our new program design would be anchored in best practices and evidence derived from empirically rigorous research on human thriving. We immersed ourselves in that peer-reviewed research in the areas of positive psychology, holistic wellness, and the physiological and psychological benefits of pursuing immersive activities like fly fishing in nature. We consulted with our veteran alumni, with our volunteers, and with our donors. We worked with, and in some cases partnered with, external subject matter experts in these fields. All of this work resulted in two fundamental changes at Warriors in Quiet Waters. The first was our outward recognition that we are not a fly fishing organization. Rather, we are a veteran services organization that puts the power of immersive activities in nature, like fly fishing, to work in service of veterans. This gave us the opportunity to put additional immersive activities, like photography and elk hunting, to work in service of veterans. The second, and the most fundamental change, was the development of our new flagship program, Built for More. We believe that veterans had a huge impact while they served on active duty, but their potential to make an impact didn't end when they left the military. They were built for more. Built for More is a one-of-a-kind program designed to equip post-9/11 combat veterans to thrive by building strengths in what we refer to as the pillars of a thriving life: security, connection, identity, potential, and purpose. These pillars are built on a foundation of holistic wellness, encompassing the mind, body, and spirit of post-9/11 combat veterans. Built for More immerses our participants in peak experiences in nature that enable the psychological, emotional, and social conditions necessary for personal growth. And with those conditions established, we guide our participants through a rigorous, nearly year-long evidence-based program that enables them to make meaning of their service, rediscover their identity and potential as veterans, and chart a path of purpose, continuous growth, and resilience. This year, we also launched a robust alumni engagement program. The alumni engagement program is comprised of 4 pillars designed to provide continued and enhanced service to our alumni, as well as opportunities to engage with Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni across the country. The Alumni Advisory Council, formed in March of this year, currently consists of 8 Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni who have volunteered to serve in an advisory capacity to Warriors in Quiet Waters. They are charged with providing insights about the evolving needs of their fellow veterans, as well as feedback about the current and planned programs and operations, among other responsibilities. The Alumni Ambassador Program consists of Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni who have volunteered to represent Warriors in Quiet Waters by sharing impact stories of their journey through Warriors in Quiet Waters programs, in order to engage a broader donor base and spread awareness to new volunteers, supporters, and warriors. The Alumni Council, with input from all alumni, coordinate opportunities for continued education in areas of interest to our alumni, including holistic wellness, entrepreneurship, military speakers, and others. And finally, the Alumni Council works to form regional cohorts to further provide our alumni the opportunity to connect with one another across the country and widen experiences in nature together close to home in the places that they live. These changes, transforming our flagship program from a week-long program that provided veterans respite, connection, hope, and healing, to a year-long high-touch program designed to enable veterans to thrive and pursue lives of growth, resiliency, and purpose, and a robust alumni engagement program designed to provide long-term engagement and connection to our warriors, represent a couple of the major steps forward for Warriors in Quiet Waters to do more for more veterans. In addition, over the last 3 years, we've increased annual veteran programming by 163%. We've increased the number that we serve annually by 182%. But we're not done striving to maximize our impact on post-9/11 combat veterans. In April, we began a new strategic planning process to envision how we can continue to increase our impact. Now, there's one caveat that I have to give you, and that's that we're not done planning. We haven't engaged our stakeholders on this strategic plan, we haven't received their feedback, and we haven't presented the plan to our board of directors for approval. But I thought I'd share today some of the initiatives that we're investigating that we believe will enable us to continue to innovate to enable post-9/11 combat veterans to thrive. The first is, how can we reinforce Built for More with a reimagined coaching program and a mentoring program? Warriors in Quiet Waters Foundation started a coaching program in 2014, where individual warriors were paired with a professional coach that worked with them over the course of the year to solve a problem that they were faced with or to seize an opportunity that they saw in their future. This is an incredibly impactful organization, but we could only offer one of it per year, serving roughly 4 to 5 veterans in this coaching program each year. So how can we affordably create a pathway to personal coaching and mentoring for all of our Built for More alumni that reinforces and accelerates the path to thriving and personal growth? The second initiative that we're looking at is, how can we improve the Built for More experience for our alumni? For Built for More new participants that are coming through the Built for More program, they first experience the initial fishing experience, a week-long immersion in nature and connection here in Montana. And that's followed by a year-long guided discovery process designed to build strength in those pillars of a thriving life that I talked to earlier. And it concludes by bringing the warriors back to Montana for another week-long immersion in nature, a week-long opportunity to continue to connect with the warriors that have been in their cohort the entire time, and to put into context everything that they experienced over the course of the last year. When we launched Built for More this year, we had over 1,400 Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni who have already been through our solo fishing experience. So this year's deployment for Built for More alumni didn't include the initial effects that our new participants see here in Montana because they've already been through a solo fishing experience. What we learned this year is that it may be imperative to get our alumni back here to Montana for an initial in-person immersion in order to make that connection and belonging and that commitment to gain the maximum benefit of Built for More for our alumni. We're also wondering how we can develop a Built for More program for our spouses that culminates in a couples fishing experience. Warriors in Quiet Waters Foundation recognized in 2008, a year after our founding, that veterans don't serve alone. They serve with families, with spouses standing beside them. And that veterans can't thrive without thriving families. And we believe we have an opportunity to create a Built for More-like program for those key family members, designed to fulfill the specific needs of military spouses, and that culminates in a couples fishing experience. We also believe we have the opportunity to do the same for our military caregivers. I'll bring you back to the statistics that I noted at the beginning of my presentation about the number of wounded. For many, these wounds require full-time caregivers, a critical role that's most often filled by a family member. Recognizing the needs of these caregivers, Warriors in Quiet Waters started a caregiving fishing experience in 2018 that focused on providing respite, connection, and belonging to our caregivers. We believe we have an opportunity to provide our military caregivers a high-touch, long-term, Built for More-like program that focuses on their specific needs and that is designed to enable our military caregivers to thrive. Now, something we're already doing is developing a warrior support program to ensure that all of our warriors' needs are served. Warriors in Quiet Waters serves warriors in a very specific way, but unfortunately, we can't be everything to everyone. However, we're currently working to establish more partnerships with like-minded veteran services organizations to meet the needs of veterans that we cannot directly serve, but that our partners can. The Warrior Experience team on our staff closely assesses participants' progress and their needs throughout the Built for More program. And they will conduct a more in-depth needs assessment following the completion of the program. Those warriors who require further assistance in various need areas will be provided with warm handoffs to partner organizations within their need areas. These handoffs, which will be facilitated by the Warriors in Quiet Waters staff, and in conjunction with our partner organization connections, we will collaborate to maintain sustained support throughout our warriors' journeys with these other organizations. Now, these are a few of the far ridge lines that we're looking at to ensure that we're doing everything we can to enable post-9/11 combat veterans to thrive. We'll present the strategic plan to the board of directors in September, and upon the board's approval, I look forward to sharing it with all of you. Now, because of these changes, we're announcing one more major initiative today. We wouldn't be where we are today without our founding brand. It's served us well for 16 years. But as our purpose, our programming, and our strategy evolved, we recognized that our founding brand was no longer positioned to resonate with our core audience, which is changing and continues to change. We are today, and what we aspire to be is different from what our brand once was. Our founding logo lacked an obvious story of our purpose to help post-9/11 combat veterans thrive. It was very literal to the activity of fly fishing, fueling the perception that we were limited to fly fishing in the services that we provide. Moreover, the brand identity needed a more cohesive system, and the brand language needed to connect with the promise of thriving. Our founding colors of purple and gold also didn't reflect how vital immersion in pristine nature is to fulfilling our mission. Additionally, the color purple, derived from the Purple Heart Medal, fueled the misconception that participants must have a Purple Heart to participate in Warriors in Quiet Waters programming, isolating warriors from applying who qualified but lacked a Purple Heart. Recognizing these challenges, we launched a rebranding initiative in 2022 to realign our brand with our new approach to veteran programming. We established a committee comprised of board members, staff, and volunteers to direct and manage the process. We held focus groups of alumni volunteers and donors to garner their recommendations and feedback. And we engaged a best-in-class design agency, Tatum Design, to help us create the new brand. Our new brand tells the story of who Warriors in Quiet Waters is now and what we strive to accomplish. We believe that inner strength is best found outdoors. Warriors in Quiet Waters is a purpose-driven community offering nature-based experiences designed to restore the minds, bodies, and souls of post-9/11 combat veterans. Our programs cultivate a safe and supportive environment where veterans can grow, heal, and experience deep camaraderie. As a community, our sole focus is to help each warrior discover that they were built for more connection, more peace, more purpose, more life. When warriors arrive at our ranch, they begin a journey that will last a lifetime, a journey that is founded on courage that leads to a future built on hope. Transformed, these men and women and their families gain renewed confidence in their ability to move forward with resilience and succeed in every area of life. Our new brand position and our brand promise are clear and succinct in explaining our offering, our promise to post-9/11 combat veterans and their loved ones. For post-9/11 combat veterans who are feeling lost, stuck, or isolated, Warriors in Quiet Waters provides a safe and supportive environment where they can regain a renewed sense of purpose and connection with their loved ones and community. Our tagline summarizes our brand promise: Warriors in Quiet Waters, equipped to thrive. Our new brand attributes represent the commitments that we make to our veterans, their loved ones, our volunteers, and our donors. Empowering, trustworthy, committed, resilient, and intentional. Our new brand colors reflect the palette of the natural settings where Warriors in Quiet Waters programming happens, including blue water, green flora, and tan land. Our new visual identity, our logo, represents the themes of thriving and growth, nature, and military symbolism. The new logo features an eagle that is strong, balanced, centered, rising up out of the water and thriving, emblematic of the military, nature, and growth. We believe that our new brand will carry us into the future as it truly represents who we are and what we stand for. Now, one of the things that we noticed in this rebranding process was the incredible storytelling power that we can achieve by combining our logo with Mike McLeod's amazing photography in our new brand language. We also recognize that change, especially changes such as this, are hard. We know that it will take time to gain recognition, loyalty, and affinity to our new brand. But we're ready for that challenge because we recognize that our rebranding also presents Warriors in Quiet Waters a tremendous opportunity, an opportunity to align our brand with our vision, our strategy, and our evolved approach to serving veterans. We also want you to know that we brought our founder, Eric Hastings, along on this journey, and Eric fully supports our rebrand. Eric is with us here at Quiet Waters Ranch today. He recently penned an op-ed to let the world know that Eric stands with our new direction and our new brand. And he'll speak more about it during a small, private, in-person ceremony we're holding here at Quiet Waters Ranch after this address. Thank you, Eric. We're confident that by seeing Warriors in Quiet Waters live up to the promises that our brand makes, you'll come to love it like we have. Now, as I conclude my remarks today, I want to highlight why we do what we do to enable veterans to thrive, why all Americans should work to enable veterans to thrive. The first is that for so many of our warriors, they and their families have endured combat-related trauma and challenges that they will contend with for the rest of their lives. Our support to them must be no less enduring. And to highlight this fact, the enduring nature of the challenges our veterans face, I'm going to tell you the story of one of our Warriors in Quiet Waters alumni. His name is James, and he served as an infantry platoon leader in Afghanistan, assuming command of his platoon after his predecessor was grievously wounded in an IED attack. While leading his platoon in an operation on March 7th, 2012, James was shot in the head. The bullet entered the back of his head and exited through his jaw, taking much of his face with it. Now, James survived the wound. In fact, he walked from the medevac helicopter to the trauma unit at the forward operating base that he was medevaced to. He shared with me, when telling me the story of his wounding experience, the look of amazement that he saw on the faces of the nurses who were waiting at the helicopter landing zone with a body bag for him to arrive. Now, this began a multi-year, multi-surgery journey to repair the damage caused by that sniper's bullet. And James is a warrior of exceptional courage and conviction. He literally took his wound in stride and committed to overcoming it. He told me that while on that medevac bird, he found the conviction that his new purpose in life would be to put his wife and children's dreams first for the rest of his life. He medically retired from the Army in 2014 and went on to become a highly successful businessman in Texas. But James's journey through adversity wasn't over. In May, he notified us that during a routine dental exam, his dental hygienist accidentally discovered via x-ray that he has two tumors along the bullet track in his head. Now, remembering James' courage and conviction, his response was that he was happy that it wasn't an emotional or a psychological wound. He told us that he can, quote, totally handle this. Afghanistan is a gift that keeps on giving, right? This just gives me another opportunity to show my kids how to handle hardship. James will undergo surgery at the end of this month to remove the tumors. He embodies the incredible courage and convictions of our post-9/11 combat veterans. But his story is also incredibly telling of the enduring nature that the challenges our post-9/11 combat veterans will face for the rest of their lives. Our support must be no less enduring. Now, the second reason is because thriving veterans make our country stronger. Thriving veterans contribute to thriving communities, thriving organizations, a thriving government that makes a better future for all of us. And like the greatest generation coming out of World War II, thriving post-9/11 combat veterans are uniquely equipped to ensure the long-term prosperity of our society. And finally, we do it because it's essential for our national defense. Our military is an all-volunteer force. And unless America's sons and daughters recognize that military service is valued and valuable, and that veterans thrive after service, they will not raise their hand and swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And we're seeing the all-volunteer force fray today. In 2022, the only military service that achieved its recruiting goals was the United States Marine Corps, and they barely made it. They barely made it. A military colleague of mine, who I served with on the Joint Staff, named Jason Dempsey, recently penned an op-ed in The Atlantic on the fraying of the all-volunteer force. Jason wrote the following, quote, "The stark fact is that most young Americans can't currently serve, and even fewer want to. Since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, just 23% of Americans ages 17 to 24 are eligible to enlist without a waiver. Obesity, medical and mental health issues, or a history of substance abuse prevent most of their peers from being able to serve. The overall propensity to serve is even worse than the eligibility. Just 9% of young Americans would seriously consider military service, near an all-time low since America's sons and daughters recognize that service in the military is valued and valuable, and that veterans thrive after service. They won't volunteer. Ensuring veterans thrive is essential to our national defense. Collectively, our community can join hands to enable post-9/11 combat veterans to thrive. How, you may ask? For our veterans, continue to serve your nation by living a life of consequence. It doesn't have to be on a huge scale. Making the world better for a single purpose is serving. Bring to bear your skills, your passions, your sense of duty, your honor. Ask yourself, what can I do that will serve the greater good? And then get busy doing it. For our civilian supporters, honor those who served and their loved ones by living a life worthy of their sacrifices. Veterans and their families put life on hold time and again while forward deployed, and oftentimes those lives fail to resume as expected. Do what you can, where you can, whether it's through a financial donation, material, time, or effort to a veteran services organization. Gratitude alone is not enough. Tell someone about Warriors in Quiet Waters and what we're doing to help post-9/11 combat veterans thrive. Buy some Warriors in Quiet Waters merchandise and wear it proudly. Invest in our mission, or tell someone about Warriors in Quiet Waters who wants to invest in a high-impact veteran services organization. Warriors in Quiet Waters Foundation is a striving organization doing all it can to enable post-9/11 combat veterans to thrive. And the fact is that we could not do any of it without the support of our volunteers and our donors. Thank you very much for your time today.
That's why he's our leader. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed his remarks. Now, Brian will take questions from our audience. If you are joining us virtually, please type your questions into the comments section. And for those here with us in person, please raise your hand and Stevie will come over to you with a microphone. We need to speak into the mic so everyone online can hear the questions. So it's open. Anyone? Are you monitoring online, Justin?
Well, while we're waiting, I'll give you the answers to a couple questions we've already received. So we took the time over the course of the last 2 months to preview our new brand with key stakeholders. And we got a lot of great feedback from them and some questions that we think need to be addressed. The first question was, why does the logo no longer contain the outline of Montana? And that's a great question, because we're a Montana-based organization whose culture and ethos arises from being in Montana. And the base of support that has made the last 16 years possible originated here in Montana. But as we went through the branding process, we recognized that we couldn't make a logo say everything that we needed it to say. And we chose to focus on other priorities, like ensuring that it says we serve military veterans, that we enable veterans to thrive, and that we do that through peak experiences in nature. We're showing Montana and the story of Montana and how it's entwined in our program by combining that logo with that incredible imagery that you saw on my slides to tell the story of how Montana has that impact. Our impact is based and born out of pristine experiences here in Montana, and we're never going to lose that fact. Any other questions?
We have a question from Steve online. Steve would like to know, You mentioned that Built for More launched in April. Are you seeing any differences in outcomes so far between a Built for More cohort during their initial fishing experience as compared to the groups who participated in the past 16 years of fishing experiences?
That's a great question, Steve. I appreciate you asking it. Now, I have to caveat that my answer is all based on anecdotal evidence. Our program evaluation for this first year of Built for More won't come back to us until next summer. So we're not going to have the true data to say it. But I can tell you what I've personally experienced in our program, what I've heard from other volunteers that they experienced in their program. And the first is the rapidity, how fast our warriors are bonding in an FX now. Typically in the past, that bonding and that true connection happened on about day 3 of the program. We're seeing that on day 1 now. And we believe the reason that we're doing that is because we get the cohort together online virtually before they ever show up here in Montana, so they know each other. And that bonding just accelerates from there. And that's a key component, one of the key outcomes that we're trying to achieve, connection. We know from the Harvard study of adult development, they looked at over 700 study participants over the course of their lifetimes. It was a very rigorous study that did everything from surveying the participants to collecting blood markers. That the number one driver of longevity and thriving in human lives is the quality and strength of our relationships. So we're seeing those relationships happen sooner and stronger. We're also seeing an outward, verbal, strong desire by our participants on the need to change and grow. They talk about it because we create opportunities for them to do it. They tell us what they want to achieve in their struggles, and they show their scars. In many of the facilitated guided discussions that happen in that initial solo fishing experience, that is limited just to our staff, program facilitators, and the warriors, they're showing their scars and talking about the challenges that they face and how they need to overcome them. And then lastly, they're showing an incredibly strong commitment to do the hard things that we ask them to do in the Built for More program. So those are some of the biggest changes that we're seeing in the initial fishing experience. Other questions?
More online, Brian.
Okay.
Callie from Facebook wants to ask what the next step after coming home from an FX is.
In the Built for More program, the next step in coming home from that initial solo FX is to get online and consume the online content that we've developed on the different modules designed to build strength in those pillars of a thriving life. That typically includes watching a video that talks about the key components of that subject matter. And then it's an activity that we give the participants in order to give them the space, the time, and the ability to reflect on what they learned. And then that module culminates in an online facilitated guided discussion that's facilitated by our staff that happens amongst the entire cohort. And there's 6 different modules throughout that guided discovery process that they'll repeat that experience over and over again over the course of the next 9 to 12 months to build strength in those pillars of a thriving life. When they're done with that, they come back to Montana as their cohort with the fellow veterans that they started the program in for another week-long experience here in Montana, immersed in nature, immersed in those connections that are so important to us, so that they can put everything that they learned, how they grew in the program into context. Thank you for the question.
Anybody? Ed.
Good show, Brian.
Thank you, Ted.
As your staff develops over this next year, are you going to aspire to get some professional credentials for the staff in the facilitator area, the counselor area, or any?
We're already working towards that and with some of those credentials. One of the things that we remain committed to was remaining a non-clinical program, which we've been since our inception. So we're not looking to bring any clinical certifications into our program because it's not a clinical program. But those facilitation certifications, those crisis recognition and management skills that are so important when we're dealing with people that are facing challenges, we're working to get our staff credentialed in those as well. So We're looking at as many areas where we believe that we can reinforce the strengths that we have on our staff to ensure that we're putting warriors first always. Does that answer your question, Ted? Yes. Thank you.
Brian, can you briefly talk about how we're going to expand the program outside of Montana because of our, well, we showed it earlier, but the weather conditions could be like here. Obviously doesn't make it easy to fish or do anything in the really tough times of the year, and how we're going to add stuff to allow people to continue to do that without that weather situation.
Thanks for that question, Ed. I appreciate it. So as I stated earlier in the presentation, we've increased our annual programming by 168%. We increased the number that we serve by 182%. And the way that we did that was by doing year-round programming. And for those of you that have been to Montana or here in Montana, I'm sure you can recognize that fly fishing in February is not easy to do. And we can't do it, what we didn't want to do was continue to do just ice fishing programs during the winter months. So starting this year, we launched our very first saltwater fly fishing experience based out of Isla Mirada, Florida, in the Keys. And it was an amazing experience that provided everything that we were looking to provide in a solo fishing experience. That immersion in nature, a true, pristine blue wilderness, the abundance of species that our participants were able to fish for, and the connection and belonging that happens by bringing those veterans together with their volunteers and with the world-class captains, the guides, that guided our participants during that week in Florida. Now, we've done this so that we have additional options for conducting those capstone FXs in the Built for More program, where we can deploy our staff to Florida in order to continue to provide year-round programming and meaningful experiences in nature that really make our program work. It turned out to be a great success, and we're looking to carry it on into the future. That doesn't mean we're not a Montana-based organization. It just means we're looking elsewhere to find those peak experiences in nature when it's dumping 3 feet of snow and it's 30 below here. So thanks for the question, Ed. Appreciate it.
Oh, there's a question in the back.
Thanks. Hey, Brian, can you talk a little bit about the difference between the individual recipient going through one of the programs with the cohorts versus what you've seen with the family programs, and just kind of what the structure of the difference is, what you've seen is kind of the value add and the growth from the individual recipient?
I absolutely can. So the family program began here at Warriors in Quiet Waters 2 years ago. And it began based on an initiative brought to our board by our founder, Eric Hastings. Once again, recognizing that not just veterans serve, our entire family served. So we spent about a year designing a program to meet specific outcomes for military families. Outcomes like teaching our families to recreate effectively together, to improve inter-couple relationships, to improve parent-child relationships, to help provide them tools and resources to problem solve as a family. And it wasn't all based on fly fishing, because the ages of children that were coming to the family program are anywhere between 9 and 18 years old. And let's be honest, a 9-year-old doesn't want to fly fish all day. So we did a lot of additional activities, nature-based activities here in Southwest Montana. We did a scavenger hunt here at the ranch and put the children in charge to get after those family problem-solving abilities. We've since put them in escape rooms, which are a room that you put people in and they got to problem solve in order to get out of it. And that program, once again, was designed to achieve specific outcomes for the family. Whereas the solo fishing experience was initially designed to provide that respite, healing, and belonging and connection to warriors reeling from the immediate aftermath of trauma. So we tried to design a program for the family program that was specifically designed to meet family needs that we could serve. So does that answer your question, Nate? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
We're going to do one more question. I think, Eric, you get a question. Yep.
Brian, can you talk about the hunting program and justify it?
I sure can. So as I alluded to at the beginning, our founding story comes from our founder, Eric Hastings' experiences coming home from Vietnam. And when Eric first told me the story, he told me that You know, his combat experiences in Vietnam were challenging. And when he came home, he went to the water with his rod in his hand, he tied on a fly, and he found healing through fly fishing. Eric went on to serve 30 years in the Marine Corps, retiring as a colonel right after the Gulf War. Eventually made it back here to Bozeman. And every time I hear Eric tell a story, I learn more. I originally thought that the idea for the solo fishing experience was Eric's, but he corrected me about a month ago and let me know it wasn't my idea. It was my wife Jean's idea. When she shared with Eric, I wish that we could give these wounded warriors this experience that we're experiencing here on this fly fishing trip. And she gave him more than the idea. She gave him the most important thing, and that was a permission for Eric to pour his life and soul into building this foundation into what it is today. So Eric's experience, shared with his wife Jean, are why we're all here today. Eric asked about our hunting program, a program that we launched 2 years ago called Hunt for Purpose. We're right in the middle of the second week of Hunt for Purpose 2023 today, and our warriors are out in the mountains right now as I visit with you here today. And the story of Hunt for Purpose, like Eric's, is my story. I also grew up here in Montana, was a lifelong outdoorsman, and I was an angler, but I was mostly a hunter, specifically an archery elk hunter. Now, I lost 5 friends to combat, and there was no making meaning or making sense of the ways that they died. I had a friend who died by getting ran over by an Amtrak in his sleeping bag during the march up in Iraq. I had 2 friends killed by IEDs. I had one friend who worked for me that was shot. And I had another friend who was killed standing in front of the desk of his regimental commander at Forward Operating Base Fallujah when a rocket impacted outside the regimental commander's window, and the shrapnel pattern hit the regimental commander in the shoulder, and my friend took the brunt of it in his chest. How do you make meaning of that? The way that I made meaning of that is when I came home from combat, after that deployment to Afghanistan, I came home to Montana, and I climbed the Greenhorn Mountains looking for archery elk. And sitting over an archery elk that I killed with my bow, I was able to make meaning of that. And the meaning that I made was that there is no sense to make of it. We can't control what happens to us in our lives. What we can control is how we respond to it. And that response will determine the outcome. And I committed it on that day to use my time to the maximum that I can to serve my family, my community, my organization, my leaders. And it was that experience that I had with archery elk hunting, similar to Eric's experience with fly fishing, that brought me the idea for Hunt for Purpose. We weren't ready to launch a Hunt for Purpose program until about a year after I got here. But the whole premise of Hunt for Purpose is really what became Built for More. How do we use immersive spiritual activities in nature, like fly fishing and archery elk hunting, to enable veterans to craft their purpose and their meaning and pursue growth and resiliency going forward? And that's what the program's about. It's not about putting an elk on the ground, but it's about using the challenging activity that archery elk hunting is in order to pursue that personal growth and to find that purpose and meaning. And we saw incredible outcomes from it last year. And those participants who went through the Hunt for Purpose program last year are back here this year serving as warrior mentors for the participants who are going through the program this year because it had that much impact on them. And they're coming here freely and giving us their time in order to do that. So once again, it's another way to create a peak experience in nature for our veterans in order to achieve the outcomes that we're achieving. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Eric. We wouldn't be here if you and your wife hadn't had that great idea. Thank you, Brian, for answering those thoughtful questions. This concludes the event. Thank you all for attending WQW's inaugural State of the Organization address. The WQW team will share a recording of today's presentation with you. We hope you learned a lot about how Warriors in Quiet Waters enables our nation's post-9/11 combat veterans to thrive after military service. We appreciate you attending. Thank you to everyone joining us in person. Online is now off. Please make your way